I realized that I wanted to pursue something other than law school while I was already in law school. And I wish that someone would have oriented me about how law school works, what makes it difficult, what are the things that you need to have in order to survive it, or how recits work, stuff like that. And I wish that someone would have told me that. Maybe you feel the same skepticism as I have felt while I was studying there. Skepticism because maybe you're unsure of continuing, or you're unsure if you want to attend law school, or if it's something worth pursuing. So this video I dedicate to the people who are curious what law school is all about. I will tell you guys my experiences about it. Not only the actual law school studying thing, I'm gonna talk about what consists in a law school entrance exam and in PhiLSAT. So before anything else, I would like to put a disclaimer here and clarify that all the things I've said here would be flavored with my experiences. I got through law school just for a year, and my experience of it is different from those people who entered it for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. Either way, that 1 year, I didn't do well, honestly. All the words that I'm gonna say here, it'll be coming from someone who is going to pursue something else. While I was studying there, I knew in myself that I didn't want to be in law school, but I did try. Regardless of whether I stayed there, there is still some part of me who wants to continue it, because the knowledge that they gave me was so powerful, and it's eye-opening to see that there really are injustices here that people just shrug off. Also, I'm talking about Philippine law schools, okay? Either way, I hope this would help. So, in order for you guys to distinguish my subjectivity and objectivity, I will put this symbol. So, whenever this symbol shows, it means that I'm saying something that's coming from my experiences, or that my words are biased. So, entrance exams. I only took 2 entrance exams. They are from UP and San Beda Menjara. Most of the exams would consist of English comprehension, meaning like those mini stories that you need to read, and then they will ask you what's the main idea, the best title, and some info about the paragraph. It would also consist of English proficiency, grammars, punctuation, stuff like that. Logic also. The logic test type would consist of questions where, let's say, this sentence was stated. You have to know if the statement is sound, unsound, stuff like that. So these 3, this would be very important in entrance exams. If it doesn't consist these 3 entirely, they are important. Sometimes there would be math, just the basics. There would also be abstract reasoning. These would be the spatial figures, where there would be 4 panels and the 4th one would be missing. It would be a sequence, and you have to figure out the missing the last panel. Lastly, there would be current events or general knowledge. This may or may not include in some specific law school entrance exams. Either way, it wouldn't hurt for you guys to read newspapers or be into news, listen to the current events. For general knowledge, it was asked for me who said I think therefore I am, or cogito ergo sum, which of the following is not a senator. General knowledge. Now, for my tips, I want you guys to prepare. And I know that some of you might be cocky and say that you don't need to review, but really, it's an entrance exam. They would have to know if you're qualified enough for that. And it is more advanced than college entrance exams, but the feel is just the same. Some law schools would offer mock exams for you to practice, and it is very advantageous, really. If there is a mock exam, I really encourage you guys to take it, because the benefits of that is that not only will you have an idea of what questions will be asked in the exam proper, you will also feel prepared. Another tip, the most important wisdom I could impart to you guys: know thyself, okay? Know your weaknesses, especially when it comes to entrance exams. Let's say, for instance, college entrance exam. You know in yourself that you have weaknesses. Like for instance, in my case, I was very weak in abstract reasoning, so I focused on that. And when I received my grades in one entrance exam from law school, my grade was superior, among other things. If you know you're weak in something, focus on studying on that. If you're weak at math, just familiarize yourself with the equations. After you finish preparing yourself on your weaknesses, delve back into the basics. What I've said earlier, English proficiency, English comprehension, logic, most importantly. And if you've got those in check along with your weaknesses, you're good to go. Now for PhiLSAT. PhiLSAT was only introduced in the Philippines recently. It was new for me, of course, and I didn't know I needed that until I was already in law school, but things are different now. I was allowed for a conditional application, meaning while I was already in law school, it was only then that they required me to take a PhiLSAT test. So the conditional application that I've had stated that if I didn't pass the PhiLSAT while I was in law school, I wasn't allowed to study for the second semester. So it was really necessary for anyone to have the PhiLSAT requirement checked. For PhiLSAT, the scope of the exams would be much wider, meaning test types would be lengthier. Not only will they focus on English comprehension, English proficiency, and logic, they would also definitely include math and abstract reasoning, current events even, but they won't ask you for an essay. So again, what I've said earlier, know your weaknesses. The thing about the PhiLSAT test is that this isn't time pressured. I mean, sure, they require you to start at the same time and end this at the same time. But when it comes to test types, they would tell that there is an ideal time for you to finish it in order to move on. But they're not strict about that. If you finished earlier on the first test type, you could already proceed to the second. And you have to use that to your advantage. If you don't know other questions, just move on and you could always go back to it. And surely if you finished earlier, you have more time to review all your answers. That's a very useful tip for you guys. To manage your time well and to leave no expense, use everything to your advantage. On the day of the exam, expect a heavy traffic. The call time would be 7 a.m. Well, in my case. But when I got into the building, which is a long while because there were a lot of people who were gonna take it, and the line was so long. So surely they've prepared for that. If I'm not mistaken, we took our test at 9 a.m. regardless of the 7 a.m. call time. So there really is an ample time for you to get ready, to sit down, as well as the administrators who are organizing it. All of you would have ample time, but do not abuse that. During the exam, you're not allowed to eat or drink. You're also not to bring a watch, your phone, even a bag. You're just allowed to bring a clear envelope where you bring with you some documents for your identification. If you do bring a bag, they will require you to surrender it to entrance to the building where you will take your exam. You know the package counters in groceries or in malls, right? Where you surrender your things and you would be given a number. There would be no such thing in PhiLSAT. It was already told by the administrators that you shouldn't bring bags. Tips. Be sure to bring all the documents that are necessary. Before you take the exam and during the exam, they will thoroughly check if your documents are complete. If they are not complete, they will make you sign a conformity binding you to submit it on time. I was one of those who did not have all the requirements, so I signed the conforme and I was given, if I'm not mistaken, I was given either 17 or 24 days to complete it, submit it myself in their office or through mail. And it was time wasted when I should have completed my requirement on the day of the exam. So in the case where you forgot any of the requirements for the test, what would happen is that they will withhold your grades until you complete it. meaning the actual document that you will need from PhiLSAT, they will withhold that. So your application for law school would be jeopardized. So you have to complete it absolutely. With regards to my conditional application, if I'm not mistaken, this is different now, where it was only allowed in my generation because the PhiLSAT requirement was only introduced on my year. Either way, you have to do your research. Oh, and also, for those who graduated with honors, you do not have to take the PhiLSAT. Really depends on the school. You have to check that as well. It's an advantage you should take. Now for law school proper. The basics of it all would be, there would be an orientation, which I missed, but you definitely should attend that because that would give you an idea of what to expect here. Before the class starts, they would already give you assignments on what to read, what provisions you need to memorize, or the cases that you need to study. So that was a culture shock for me because they already assigned you even though the class hasn't started. So I took that advantage for granted, and it was only when I attended in law school did I realize that some of the attorneys there wouldn't bother discussing it before they ask questions. So my tip for you guys is when they assign the cases, you should go check that out. The grading system would consist of recitations, quizzes, and major exams. For recitations, it really depends on the professor that you have. Before the class starts, the professors would require you to submit a class card, a kind of ID. This class card will be submitted by each student, and once the professor has collected it, he will pick one and you will call the student, and then recitations begin. You have to answer his question. It really depends on the prof what kind of questions he would ask. Some profs would only ask you to recite certain provisions like Article 1 of the Revised Penal Code or from Article 1 to Article 5. It really depends. There would be some who would ask that and ask other questions related to that. Once you've answered the questions and the professor is satisfied, he would allow you to sit down. But if you haven't answered it, either he will exhaust you until you can no longer give answers. He could also call other people to answer for you, but you will remain standing. That was a culture shock for me as well. While I was in college, what was important for me was the subject that I'm attending. But in law school, your grades would be at the mercy of your professors, along with the teaching style they have. Now for major exams, expect essays. If you're not aware now, then I should tell you that most of the questions, if not all, would consist of essays. There would be some modified true or false, which is technically not an essay, but they would need you to justify it with 2 or 3 sentences. So either way, it's an essay. The skill that you need here is to construct your thought well. Even when I was studying there and after we took the exam, there was this professor who scolded the class because most of the essays were filled with grammatical errors and you would be deducted points. In law school, you have to be eloquent. They would also require you to write legibly and big. If you're one of those people who write in small letters, you would be scolded here. Here, they require you to use a sign pen rather than a normal pen. And some professors would wish you to write in cursive. Really, it depends. Yellow pad here will be your friend, and you will be asked to write digest or some homeworks. Either way, yellow pad will be your staple. As a philo major, our profs would require us to exhaust the topics in our exams. But it is different in law school because here they want you to answer concisely. In here, you don't need to use flowerful words. In answering the exams, do not linger so much on the supporting ideas. Focus on what is being asked. The immediate answer to the question would be the most important. Other than the essays, there would also be enumerations, like enumerate the mitigating circumstances or what constitutes a void marriage. The questions could probably also be comparative, like what's the difference between void and voidable marriage, just like that. In major exams in law school, it would be extremely time pressured. It would feel like 2 hours or an hour and a half isn't enough to answer it. So that is why you have to answer as concisely as you can. And if you don't know the answer, just leave it blank for a while. The trick in entrance exams is to not leave any blank answers. Since it's all in essay format, each point counts. You will feel relaxed at the end of the exam when you've answered everything and you know in yourself that you did everything you could. The format of answering essays here is actually suggested to us. It is even used in answering bar questions. In answering these essay questions, we use the ALAC method. The answer, legal basis, application, and conclusion. So let's say for instance, is the marriage void? Answer, yes. Legal basis, because according to article something something something, it is said that a void marriage is da la la la. Since one of those criteria are apparent in the case, application, it is reasonable to conclude that the marriage is void. Conclusion, therefore, the marriage is void. That's how the ALAC method works. Grading system aside, attendance in law school is very crucial. In my university, only a certain number of people is allowed to take a leave of absence every day. Let's say if we're 32, only 6 people are allowed to be absent. In order for our class to manage the absent count, we need to reserve the absence on that day. If the number of people who are allowed to be absent exceeded, there would be certain consequences. That's for our university. What happened to us, there was this one time, since that there were too many people who got absent, instead of having recitation, the professor just gave us a quiz. It was a surprise quiz, and I was surprised. But at the time, I felt more comfortable because at least when you're answering a quiz, you won't be humiliated because of giving a wrong answer. And it is pretty humiliating. Since we're talking about humiliation, what you need to expect is that you will be humiliated. That would be inevitable. There's no way of dodging it. There will come a time where you will give a wrong answer and all these people will hear you. It's scary. But at some point of continuously attending law school and exposing yourself to such humiliation, you will be desensitized, along with your friends, along with your classmates. They will also feel the same way. They will be empathetic, so the humiliation thing would not be a big deal. There would also be professors who would humiliate you with the answers that you've given. But that really depends on the professor, or that really depends on the school. Either way, I don't think you will survive law school without experiencing that kind of humiliation. The thing you would also have to expect is that you would receive tons and tons of assignments, reading assignments. So much that it would seem unjust, at least in my school. If you're gonna attend law school, the first semester would always be difficult because you will be adjusting to the culture that they have. Even when you receive the initial assignments, even before attending law school, it's already a culture shock. The amount that you need to absorb would feel unjust because of the other subjects that you need to pass. In my case, I was a philosophy major, and it isn't a legal course. All the tips and tricks that we've learned in philosophy were completely useless when we were in law school, except our skill in absorbing content. Either way, don't fret if you don't have the right skill to survive in law school. They will teach you that. I'd like to think that where you came from, the course that you have, has its own skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be something related to law. When you get into the first few weeks of law school, it would feel like all of you are equal. Indeed, in the first few weeks, they will teach you the basics of it all. How you make case digests. Now, this is a different thing. So what this does is, when they want you to recite about the case, it should be given that you've already summarized it in a way. So they will teach you that a case digest would comprise of facts, the issue, and the ruling, or held. There's no need for me to delve into that because the school that you'll be attending will teach you that. The teaching style of the attorneys or professors here in law school are usually Socratic method. Socratic meaning they will ask you questions continuously until you realize that you know nothing. It's kind of devious if you thought about that, but they will stop on the extent of them being satisfied or that they figured out that the student hadn't prepared. Really depends on the professor. Also, what you need to expect here is that grades aren't generously given. If you are grade conscious or grades matter to you, law school would either make or break you. This is a fact. I was one of those grade conscious people, and law school broke me, especially when humiliation was part of the process of learning. I was told by this professor that there was nothing wrong with this system of humiliation because that is how law school teaches you grit. It also depends on the prof how high they give. Either way, expect to have grades as common as 85 or 78, 79 on your quizzes, recitations, because that's just how it is. I was intimidated when I was interviewed that they're concerned if I could take it emotionally because humiliation and the failure is predestined in a way. The interviewer even told me that failing is inevitable in law school. And that kind of scared me because I've never had a failing grade before. I told you before, if you know yourself, you know your weaknesses, as well as knowing how you absorb knowledge, you'll figure everything out. The most basic expectation here in law school is that you'll definitely lose sleep over this. I would just like to clarify here some myths about law school. For instance, that you wouldn't have time for yourself in law school. That's a myth. Let's be realistic and clear here that you will definitely find yourself time to watch Netflix or just YouTube or play games. Law school indeed demands you to focus on your studies, but you cannot survive law school if you're too tense. Your body will really find its way to relax. Once you got the hang of yourself, it would be easier for you to manage your time for studying and for relaxing. Another myth is that somehow related to the first one. This myth that your love life would be hindered in law school. Well, if you're single, you would probably get crushes. It's normal. It's normal to get crushes, and you may get into a relationship with them, and that's better actually. You will have someone to study with you. You will keep yourself motivated to stay in law school. Your love life, it really depends on you then as well. Okay, when it comes to the books, it isn't a myth that books are costly. It is. But there's another way to acquire those references and the required links for you to have. There's the internet. But there are some professors who require books that aren't on the internet or that aren't easily accessible, but really it's based on your street smarts. Also with there's this thing called CD Asia. It is in this site where all the necessary cases are there and you have to subscribe to it. Some schools require your subscription. That's costly. Like the subscription we have to pay was like, is it 1,600 pesos? I forgot. The trick to that is find someone or a group of you guys to buy one subscription for all of you. Just memorize the username and the password and you're good to go. If you're fickle with that because you have to spend money, there's the internet. The problem with that is that when it comes to this CD Asia thing, they are more credible. To save more money, soft copies. Now I'll tell you guys my tips or the things that I've learned in law school. Okay, first, having a dorm near the school that you're attending is a big help. Spending this time on commute could have been used on studying, so might as well invest on a dorm. You know, I told you before that they would assign you cases as early as even before the first day of classes. Use that time. Once you've attended the classes, you'll realize that really it's important. Going back to what I've said earlier, know thyself. Know your weaknesses. Know how to deal with yourself. Know how much time you need to read, to memorize, stuff like that. Know how your system works. Are you better off studying alone or with friends or in group studies? Oh, especially in group studies, there would be times where there would be too many cases for you to digest on your own. So you will need the help of other people, your classmates. Invite them to a case pool where you will assign certain cases for each of you, so it would be less of a manage for yourself. And at the end of the day, we'll have all these cases digested, and it will be shared by everyone. So that's a great help. Case pools and group studies. Group studies help as well. Being a lawyer is a talking occupation, so you might as well familiarize yourself with talking about it, talking about cases. Your grades are at the mercy of your professors. They don't give high grades usually. It really depends on the professor. But this is the trick to surviving law school, grades wise. If you've proven enough that you're a competent student, a law student, that you can answer well, or that you can write well, or you've proven your potential to be a good law student, they will surely pass you. First years are usually the time where they find the cream of the crop, and from there only a few would be moving on to the second year. Also, you need friends. I'm one of those people who tried surviving law school alone, and it didn't help. I mean, even if I tried it alone, I was looking for my friends from other law schools to do a study group with me. So you need friends. It helps. It helps for you to motivate yourself to study and to maintain in law school if you really want to. Also, when it comes to recitations, I suggest, if the professor allows, to take note of the questions they ask, because surely enough, it would appear in the major exams. Don't forget to loosen your nerves and have fun. Have fun in a sense like go out with your friends, grab some drinks, play video games, or go shopping. Know when to lose control. That's the trick. There is a necessity for you to have fun. One of my professors told us that hard work really pays off, but sometimes hard work isn't enough. Luck. There's this thing with luck. For example, you've studied so hard, you've prepared so hard for this recitation on the day, and you are on deck, and you didn't get called. Luck. That's where luck comes in. I mean, it's out of your control, but what's in control is your preparation for it. Now, for those people who are skeptic, as I was, skeptic of whether or not you're going to continue law school, a tip for you: if you have exhausted yourself in a sense that you've done everything you could, that's when you know whether or not you're fit for law school. I knew it wasn't for me while I was already in it because of principal reasons for me. Principal reasons in the sense that their manner of teaching, the way of you being forced to memorize things, it didn't feel right for me. Rather for the prof to explain the answers or explain the hows and whys of a provision, they just demand you to perfect it just by reading it. And I understand that provisions are crafted from expertise, but what I hate about law school is that it somehow demanded for you not to be a beginner. It's as if that it wasn't allowed. The culture was too different for me. It was too foreign. Not only that, I was sad. The sadness engulfed me up until my final exam for the second semester. Also, I was told by the guidance counselor that most law students are depressed because of the stress. If you don't know how to manage yourself, the sadness you feel, the humiliation of it all, the pressure, you'll need help if you want to continue it. You'll need help in general. I know that I did everything I could. I attempted to make friends in my block. They were not welcoming. I found friends from other blocks. That helped, but either way, they're more focused on the friends they have in their block. I tried studying. When I studied, the questions that I was prepared for wasn't asked in when I was called. I really did. I relaxed myself rather too much, really. I did everything I could. I realized that when I was attending just to recite, and I wasn't even afraid to um, give a failing answer. I wasn't afraid at all. That was when I realized that law school isn't for me. That I wasn't even afraid of losing my privilege of studying law school. Maybe that's the wisest thing I have to say in this video. If you know in yourself that you're not afraid to lose this privilege, or you're not afraid of entering it, you know it's not for you. It's a difficult process. That's why I was so fickle about this age that I am, this age of being in my 20s, being both a kid and an adult, trying to be perfect at the same time, allowing myself to begin. The school that I attended, it was as if that they didn't allow beginners, and I hated that. It was truly the world of an adult. You have to realize that this is a graduate school. You'll be attending classes with older people. It really puts you in perspective. They've been wanting law for so long. You would meet people who would either want law more than you, or as lax as I was. In my last few classes in my second semester, there were a lot of inspirational goodbyes that if you fail now, pursue it elsewhere. Either way, this is for you. And that was inspiring. You really know in yourself if you're up for it. It's just a shame that um I have to survive a year's worth for this realization. If my experiences didn't help, perhaps go attend law school, and you'll know. You'll definitely know. In my case, I want to go back. Were it not for this sadness that I felt, I would have continued successfully. Just remember that yes, this is a graduate school, and you're not meant to be spoon-fed with knowledge. Unlike college, you must learn to feed for yourself. Think about the country. Especially in this age, we need people who are wise enough to be lawyers, who really wish the best for the country or for the next generations. In this stage, you're no longer allowed to think about yourself. You need to think about other people too. And that's the paradox of it all. This being a lawyer is a service. You will no longer have to think about yourself. You have to use your privilege to help others, and macroscopically, the country. I hope this helps.